analysis from the Women's Budget Group has suggested that men will benefit far more than women from the plan to cut national insurance contributions, with lone mothers gaining the least.
Joining us now is the Communications Director for the Women's Budget Group, Erin Mansell. Erin, good morning. Explain that to me. She thinks I'm a cynical old man. Explain to me how the budget is anti-women. Put it in lay women's terms for me.
Morning. We did some analysis at the Women's Budget Group to look at how the cut to national insurance would affect different household types. And so when you look at kind of lone parent households, lone mothers stand to gain the least from the cuts. And when you add up the effect of the autumn statement, 2p of income, national insurance, and what was announced yesterday, there's about a £500 a year difference. Single men will gain about £500 more a year compared to lone mothers, and couples without children will gain about £1,200 more. So overall, the average between men and women is also that men will stand to gain more, and that's because women tend to do more unpaid care work and so have lower incomes and lower pay, and so anything that takes money off your gives you back money in your pay packet will advantage men over women.
And Erin, what's the answer to addressing some of this imbalance? Is it to have means-tested cuts? What is you and your charity campaigning for?
Yeah, so what we would like to see is generally more progressive taxation overall, but also, I mean, the other big stark thing in this budget, which is also why it kind of disadvantages women, is that what's built into the budget in order to partly to fund these cuts is actually that we're going to see cuts to public spending down the line. So we know that overall the kind of envelope that the Chancellor set out is it maintains a kind of 1% real term spending. But that, given the protections for some departments, including defence and some for the NHS, that means that unprotected departments, which includes local government, means that they will see real terms cuts over this period. And women disproportionately work in those sectors. They rely on the services that are provided there, and they, shoulder the burden when those services are pulled back. So the idea as well that we're going to see huge efficiencies in these sectors. The NHS is, I think, 3/4 of the workforce are women. You look at social care, you're going to ask people, we've seen what's happened in social care. People given kind of 50-minute slots to take care of someone who needs care. The clues in the name, this is care, it's relational. It's really hard to make efficiencies in those sectors in the way you might in a factory where you're producing kind of units to make cars. So we need to see a plan would be good as well. Yesterday was kind of, it was bits here and there, but we didn't see a big plan for the economy, which is really struggling. And the answer being kind of tax cuts is not what we would say would help the economy, but particularly will not help women who have borne the brunt of 12 years of cuts previously, followed by the pandemic, followed by a cost of living crisis that we haven't recovered from, that women and low income women, the most disadvantaged women, lone mothers, have really borne the brunt of. So we need to see big kind of a plan and investment in public services to support women.
Pete?
Well, listen, I think, there's a lot in that, certainly, where the budget is. I mean, I think there is a plan. It may not be a plan that everybody agrees with, but there is a plan in terms of the fact that, yes, care is a really, really good example of the fact of a bit of the public sector that just isn't working at the moment. It's falling over. There are lots of women who work in that, of course. And I mean, I think of the women who provided fantastic care for my grandmother in the last couple of years of her life. We say it's unskilled. It's not. You need some really, really good skills, and it is underpaid. There's no doubt about that for the work that they do, which is, incredible, often unpleasant work that I personally couldn't do. So I think that there's a lot here. There's a lot that Jeremy Hunt needs to think about. And if Rachel Reeves can capitalise on that, as probably the first female Chancellor this country will see, and, it's about time that happened, I think there's a lot in that, and there's probably a lot in that electorally in terms of what your guest is saying there.
Do you think that Sunak could potentially put forward a female Chancellor between now and potentially an election?
I don't see it happening. No. I think Jeremy Hunt will remain as the Chancellor. There may well be a reshuffle.
He doesn't need to. The Tory party have already provided the two female first Prime Ministers.
And it is the most diverse cabinet we've ever seen. So hopefully, well, for the Conservatives, from that perspective, people will, I don't think there are too many people. There will be people who will always say the Conservatives are, a racist bunch of white men. I mean, they're not, demonstrably. and people will see what they want to see. But certainly, I mean, Labour hasn't had a female leader. Margaret Beckett was, of course, an interim leader, but not an actual sort of full leader. Do these things matter? Does it matter that there aren't any women in the top 4 jobs in Prime Minister, Foreign Secretary, Home Secretary and Chancellor at the moment? Well, maybe that matters, maybe it doesn't. But also we've seen good and bad women and good and bad men within those roles. But that sort of symbolism is important to some people. But what's much more important, as we were just hearing, is what actually, whether substance and whether women, minorities, people who are less able to pay, people on the lower end of society, are actually helped by a budget or not. And Jeremy Hunt will be saying, look, if you're on the average wage, you've got another 450 quid in your pocket.
And it's not necessarily about simply having a minority or a woman in a position of power. It's what that person then does for minorities.
And it can't just be symbolic. There's got to be substance there.
Here. Well, thank you so much to Erin Mansell from the Women's Budget Group. Thank you for joining us, and to Peter Cardwell. A pleasure as